Hello and welcome to my shop. Today we are going to be doing some rust repair on this 1991 Mercury Capri right behind me. We've been doing some front end collision repair. This car was purchased from a salvage auction. I'm trying to rescue it and keep it on the road. If you want to see other videos of working on the front end of this car, doing paint body work, fixing all the collision stuff, there's other videos that I can link up above or put somewhere in the description. But anyway, those are on my channel. Today I wanted to just focus on rust repair. So this car has some rust in the front wheel wells. I don't think there's any in the rear wheel wells. I'll double check that in here in a minute, but I wanted to make a video talking about how to fix kind of that rust if you have similar underbody rust on your vehicle and you have a cheap welder and you're able to fix it, or you know someone with a welder. So let's get right into it. This is going to be a little bit more of a tutorial, kind of a how-to, the steps, and how to do this kind of on a budget. So let's get into it. You might think the first step is to jack up the car, but actually the first step is to prepare yourself and prepare your workspace. So if you have long hair like me, I recommend getting it away from your face so you can look and, look underneath the car and not be dragging your hair through the oil and the dust and everything. If it's hot where you live, I recommend turning on a fan. I've got a little box fan kind of off screen here to try and keep the shop cool. I've also got some clothes that I'm okay getting dirty in, so if I make a mess, I'm not ruining an expensive pair of jeans. So I apologize for the terrible lighting. I'm gonna wear a hat to keep hair out of my face, but also it's gonna make shadows. But anyway, next step is the workspace. There's a bunch of parts laying around from taking things off this car to put them, to fix things. So I need to clean up all of the parts laying around so we can actually get room to lay our tools out and get to the front wheel wells. I checked the rears, there's no rust in the rear wheel wells, it's just the fronts. So I'm going to clean up and get ready to jack the car up. When it comes to working on cars in general, I find that good housekeeping just makes for a better overall experience. If you're tripping over your own parts and kicking the wall and you barely have enough room to work, it can just add to the frustration of already a kind of frustrating experience because you're having to fix your car. It's hot, it's sweaty, you're turning wrenches, it's hard to get to stuff. You can't see what you're doing. So try to save yourself the frustration that doesn't need to be there. Clean up, have some kind of system of organization. Just a little bit goes a long way, in my opinion. And then when it comes to jacking up your car, some people, they are fine with just lifting from the pinch welds. Some cars, yeah, that's totally fine. Other cars, you have to be really careful where you jack it up from. So it's always good to check whatever car you're working on. Just Google what are the lift points and make sure you're not going to be destroying something by accident because you're putting the entire weight of the car on it when you're lifting it from that point. Also for me, since I'm welding kind of on the bottom of the car and I don't have a lift, the higher you can get it, the better. Obviously be safe, don't drop the car on yourself, but the higher the better, so you're not just like laying on the floor getting sparks on top of you. All right, time to check out the rust situation. So if you're curious what the front suspension of a 91 to 94 Mercury Capri looks like, well, that's it. If you're curious what kind of rust can collect on your Mercury Capri, or just any car that has, the fenders here cover things. On these ones, they have some additional sound deadening that sits like inside the fender well, and I guess that can just trap moisture and cause things to rust out. Even if they do have this like rubberized undercoating or factory undercoating, it is still possible. This car that we're looking at is, again, 1991, so that's like 33 years old, something. But it's not terrible. So we can see just kind of this pinch weld where the different layers of sheet metal come together. They're just kind of rusting away. And it's not terrible. We could almost just like grind it smooth and paint it so it doesn't continue rusting. The only problem is, down here we actually have a hole. And a-holes aren't always bad, but this one, we do not want that. So we don't want any additional water or animals or bugs getting inside the car and causing more rust, especially because the tire is right here. It's going to be flinging up mud and dirt and water. So that's kind of the biggest thing we're fixing here. If we look at the front rockers, still very solid, just a little bit of surface rust kind of underneath where the fender sits and mounts on the floor. Again, very solid. This is just some surface rust down here. And this pinch weld down here is a little mangled from being jacked up. It's very easy to do this because it's next to the edge of the car. People just put the jack here and lift it, but it can bend it and whatever, and then if it separates, if it cracks the paint, you can get water sitting up in there and it rusts. So I'm not going to be trying to like rebuild the profile and everything, but I do want this to be slightly nicer than it is. The rest of the car is pretty nice and rust-free. It's a good surviving car for how old it is, so I want to try and keep it in nice condition. I'm not doing a full teardown restoration, but fixing some front end damage and saving it from the scrapyard, I'm happy to do that. So this side isn't too bad. You can quickly check out the other side. It's not as bad, but kind of just the same story, but mirrored. So on the other side, this was kind of rotting away, but here we see it's still here. We're kind of missing a big piece here. This line kind of disappears. But again, this side has like a tiny pinhole right here where it kind of goes into the inner structure behind the door sill underneath. Similar situation, pretty solid. A little bit of surface rust underneath the floor. But overall, the corner is very solid. It's just this pinch weld that's kind of inside the wheel well. So let's go talk about the tools that I'm going to be using to do this rust repair. So the first tool I'm using is a basic corded drill, nothing fancy. I'm using these wire brushes to knock off the rust and the loose paint. There's two styles. There's the front-facing bristle brushes and the side-facing bristle brushes. They're both good, so if you can get a variety pack, that's perfect. Next tool is a standard angle grinder. Again, just the corded version, nothing fancy. It's got the sanding or the flap disc, so it's not too aggressive. We're not cutting, we're just kind of sanding away. I don't have the dust shield on here because it doesn't fit too well, so also I'm going to be wearing PPE and gloves to keep all the dust and paint chips out of my face. For our welder, I have the Forney Easy Weld. This one was available on Amazon. It's just a basic 120 volt connection. We're running with flux core MIG welding, so no gas required. I went with this one just because the knobs on the front are adjustable, so you can do really thin stuff all the way up to decently thick stuff. Some of the accessory equipment you'll need is a wire brush, cutter to trim the welding wire, and then obviously welding gloves and a welding mask. And that's pretty much all the tools we'll be using. I'm going to start on this side just because we have the best lighting setup and distance between the wall, and there's no point in showing both sides. They're going to be the same. And this is the worst side. This is going to be the one that needs the most welding, so I'll just use this side for demonstration. I think first off, I'm going to clean up all of the rust, knock off all of the flaky stuff with the bristle brush on the end of a drill. I don't want to go too crazy with the angle grinder if I don't have to. Again, I'm not trying to like remove material, but our goal is to get all of the flaky rust off, kind of get some of the paint off, and we just want to strip it back to get to the clean metal that is there. So when we do weld and start putting in a couple little patches here and there, we have good clean metal to weld to. So let's knock the rust off and see what it looks like.
But
All right, I think I've got most of the loose stuff off. I was kind of hoping that these two like layers would be a little closer together, and I could just kind of fill in the corner. You can see this kind of like light gray, whitish material is like some, I don't know if that's foam or seam sealer. This car was repaired, like it had the front end repaired like once before I got it, so I'm doing like the second time the front end has been fixed. I don't know if the first time this car got hit, if the repair went all the way back to like the firewall and this fender part in here. So I don't know if like the seam sealer or any of like this stuff is from factory or from someone else fixing it before. I think I will have to go get some metal to bridge the gap. And at least kind of make like a partially rounded corner just to kind of cap off this edge. And then maybe like a flat piece to cover up this bigger hole down here in the base. So I got just some cheap digital calipers, and I tried to measure kind of how thick the sheet metal is. But for some of these thin layers, I'm seeing like 0.03 inches. And then for some of the thicker stuff here, for like the door bar, that is closer to like 0.06. So I think I'm going to go to Home Depot, see what they have in the 0.3 to 0.6 inch range. Preferably something thin enough I can form it, with basic hand tools like pliers and a hammer. Because I'm not a full metal fab shop, I don't have a bunch of fancy sheet metal forming tools. And I'm trying to do this on a budget. So the most expensive thing is the welder, and that was like under $500. Alright, I sampled Home Depot's wares, and they have some 22 gauge, just basic steel. It's not galvanized, so you can just weld to it. It's like mild carbon steel. It's just got a little bit of oil on it, so it doesn't rust when it's on the shelf. So they had 22 gauge, which is 0.03 something inches. And then they also had 16 gauge, which is like 0.06 inches. So I mean, this one's gonna be kind of thick and difficult to shape. So I think I'm gonna try and avoid using this one. I'll keep it for, some other project in the future. But this one is, it's gonna be easier to shape, and it's gonna match closer to what we're filling. Because the thicker stuff is like on the bottom there, but then for all the stuff on the wheel arch itself is gonna be like the 0.03 inch stuff. So I'm gonna go with this, and then I can just cut like a nice long strip that's really narrow, and then I can shape it and bend it and hopefully make a nice little patch piece. We want to start up here and cut a strip down to there. And it can kind of twist and work its way around. So, nice thing about thinner sheet metal is it's easier to shape by hand and just kind of bend and twist around. But I'm thinking like here, we kind of twist it this way and twist like this way. So this is obviously way too big. I'm gonna be kind of trimming back and doing some other stuff with this piece. It's not gonna go on exactly like this. All right, but I think up top here, we kind of wanna wrap around from this side to kind of underneath. So we're gonna wanna make this into like a U shape if possible. Alright, so after a little bit, I think I have kind of our first section. It's going to be way too difficult to try and do this all in one piece because it's not like a nice straight line. It's kind of curving and winding, and it's wider here and narrow here, wide again at the bottom. So I think I'm just going to separate it into chunks and sections. So I think we have our first top section. So I think this will be good to go kind of up here. I have this little tab here to kind of maybe continue with that. And then here we kind of just follow the curve around. I can trim away the paint a little bit so we can just kind of weld along it. And then here on kind of the inside of the fender well, I have a little bit more work to do to kind of curl it around. But then we can kind of do the same thing and weld along the side here. And then up here at the top, this will be kind of like a rain gutter, so I'll just make sure that doesn't get full of like water. And then I think because there is still sort of stuff back here, and there's also bare metal, I have some seam sealer that I haven't used yet, so I might just put like a bead kind of along this old seam sealer, so I can like put this in place. It holds it, it hopefully creates like a seal behind it, and then I've got raw metal on this piece that I'm holding, and then there's also raw metal along the fender, and I can just weld on the outside. I can weld kind of on this inside edge, and it'll be kind of sealed behind it. There won't be big air pockets for water to get into. It's going to be slow, but I'm hoping it's going to hold it for a long time and not rust. But yeah, so I'm kind of just using a variety of hand tools to hold it and shape it. So you can kind of grab it with the pliers, trim little pieces at a time, and try and just bend kind of section by section, and kind of shape it into whatever profile you want. I was also trying to use the hammer to see if I could use this and just kind of hammer the metal around the shape that's there. That sort of worked. But yeah, I'm rambling again, so I'm gonna go plug in the welder, get my gear on, and then try and clean these up and do some tacks. There's also people doing heavy equipment things outside the shop right now. They're not my people, they are doing other things for a different shop. But you can probably hear them going to town out there. Not literally going to town, but like working hard. So I'm just gonna layer this pretty full of stuff. So hopefully it kind of smushes out. Again, we're not laying perfect beads for like a window or a windshield here. Sorry that my hands are shaking so much. Holy cow. It's not that hard to push, apparently I'm just shaking so much. Alright, we want this to be here. We want it to go squish, but not quite too much squish. Alright. That's kind of squishing out the edges. So, I'm going to try and wipe up what I can. So I did put on too much, so I'll remember that for the next piece. Okay, so after welding around and around and around, being on the ground sucks. All the sparks are going to land on you, so just heads up, you're gonna get burnt like a lot. So also it's really hard to see on the inside because the suspension is all still here. So if you have the option to take that out, it might be nice. Otherwise, you've got to just try and like see around a corner. So yeah, these aren't super pretty, but it's thin sheet metal, so you kind of have to just do like tacks at a time. You can't just like lay a bead and then go. It's gonna get way too hot. You're gonna just melt through all this like super thin material. It's gonna just be vaporized and there's nothing left to weld to. So you gotta be careful not to get it too hot. For this, since we're doing the thinnest stuff, we're basically using the lowest settings possible on the welder. The chart on the inside of the cover says to use setting 1 and 1 for 22 gauge steel, which is our filler material, and basically what we're welding to. So for both of those things, basically you want low and low, as low as it can go. So you don't need like a really fancy expensive welder to do sheet metal like this. Actually, it's really easy to get too much current and just melt through it, and then you can't really get that stuff back. It's just gone. So if you're doing this at home, take your time, and when you are done, we're gonna come back and grind all these boogers smooth anyway. So after paint, and especially with the thick rubberized coating, you probably won't even notice. All right, as far as putting the seam sealer on, I'd start welding a little bit, and then it would start like melting and like squirting out somewhere else. So I don't know if the seam sealer was the best option. I think I definitely used too much on that first piece. So I think on future pieces, I'll use less. I think I'll still use it, at least in the middle. But I'm gonna keep moving forward and start making our next sheet metal piece. After removing a small mountain of loose material and rust dust and peeling undercoating, I think we have kind of our exploration phase done. So if we look on the side here, it's a very like rough, jagged edge, so that's gonna need to be addressed, but it's not structurally like bad. There is a hole here, so that will need to be patched. If we come around the front side, there is a small hole here, another pinhole here. This is all surface rust because the undercoating was starting to peel, so it just rusted behind there. So I might kind of do something there and then have like an L shape to try and like fill in this piece a little bit so it goes flat and then has like a curve to kind of like build this back up, and I don't know, maybe weld it in or just cut it so it's not as sharp. if we look under the car, we have kind of this plate. I don't know if this plate is original or if this is like a replacement piece someone patched in at some point. But it's kind of, we've got a little bit of like rusting here, like in between the two layers, so I might just like fill that in with weld, just to kind of reattach it. And then we've also got a small hole here, a hole here, and then over here is kind of just like loose flaky dust. I mean, I could probably stab at it and make a hole, but I don't want to, because then that's more stuff to weld back together. So like all the structures here, again, it's not a safety concern, it's more just like stop the hole before it rusts and gets any bigger in the future. Yeah, I'm not going to bother showing this whole thing again, so I'm going to do some movie magic, and just like that, we are done. We have our patch panels welded into place. It looks ugly, but it's strong and solid once again. Kind of reconstructed this curve over here. So I'm going to grind the welds smooth. I'm going to apply primer, apply undercoating, and then we will be done. We can put the wheels back on and the rust repair will be completed. So I'm going to spend some time with the grinding wheel, polishing these up, making these look good and not quite so lumpy and ugly. So we're gonna do a short time lapse. I'll do both sides, this side and the other side, and then we can start cleaning, do a little bit of surface prep, and then we'll do primer. And with that, we have our undercoating applied. I'm going to let this dry for a few days, and at that point, our rust repair is complete. We can put the wheels back on, we can finish reassembling. We have more paint and body work to do, but that's gonna be saved for a future video. So hopefully you found this video useful, you learned something. This is kind of my first time doing it, so don't judge me too hard on the quality of my welding, but if I can do it, you can definitely do it. You don't need a big shop, you don't need a bunch of fancy stuff. You can just get yourself a cheap welder, go out and sweat in your garage for a couple hours. But if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, make sure you leave a like down below the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to see other videos. I do make tutorials, and I also do kind of like build videos. So this one is more of a build video, but I figured I could make a tutorial out of this step of the process. So if you are interested in automotive projects or other projects, I know some people have been leaving comments about my small engine project. I haven't forgotten. That's still in the works. Next video is going to be a first start video, so if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe. And otherwise, I guess I will just see you in the next one. Bye.